Hello and welcome to the Welborne podcast. We're inviting you to join us on a journey 17 years in the making, which will eventually culminate in the creation of a new, unique place here in Hampshire. Driven by the vision and passion of a local landowner to create a new, thriving community here just north of Fareham, where alongside 6,000 beautifully designed new homes, the region will be enhanced with accessible green spaces, shops, schools, a technology park, and much, much more. And as part of this podcast series, I am delighted to be joined by some of the talented individuals behind bringing this vision into reality as visionaries, creatives, and architects who have combined to create this truly unique and one-of-a-kind development. And today it is the turn of Fiona Gray who joins me, who I'm very excited to talk about, Fiona, because you are heading up the community liaison group as part of the Welborne project. So it makes you a kind of expert in building relations and rapport with the wider community. And I kind of consider that one of my specialities as well. So it's fantastic to have you here.
Thank you.
So what's great for your background is that you're an engineer by trade as well. So tell us a little bit about you coming into this world of construction.
Sure. I think it probably was all sparked off by my geography teacher at school, Mr. Kelly. And I think I had a slightly unnatural fascination with soil. There's nothing more I can say about it.
And is that from the garden at home?
No, this is like soil, but beyond your topsoil in your garden. This is like deep, getting down, digging, etc. So that, I think, captured my imagination. And zooming forward after university, etc., I started to work at John Lang Construction, and I was a site engineer, basically digging holes with tractors and out there with drillers, and a lot of it on industrial sites. So I was a soil engineer initially for quite a number of years, and then over my career moved away from that to more project management, and then eventually found myself, I had a few years in the city as well, doing M&A work, merger and acquisition work, and then the last 15 working for Buckland.
Okay, and that, of course, is a residential project here.
Yes.
As part of Welborne. What is it for you about people's homes? And I guess, what does the role mean for you in engaging with the wider community about this new project that's going to happen in their back garden? I
know. For me, it's such a unique approach, really, and it's such a different way of delivering housing and a place. And I think for me, what I see is a lot of the people I talk to, they have a picture of a sprawling housing estate, because to a degree that's what they're used to seeing elsewhere, or that's what they've come to be used to when people say there's a new development. And for me, Welborne is breaking the mould in all of those areas to create something really quite special. And that, for me, is the important message to get across to people, and trying to change their ideas and their vision of what a new place can be. And in fact, this podcast is being produced to also engage with the wider community and potential residents. But I think for people that don't understand and realise as well, the formation of Buckland Development actually come out of the first muted ideas of a new village or town in this region, didn't it? So tell us a little bit more about that in 2006. Absolutely. Well, it started before then, actually. So, I mean, I think the concept of a new place, or a new community, as it was called, was probably muted as much as 20 years ago, when the local authority were looking at their housing requirements, looking forward at that time for the next 20, 30 years. And so the council then decided to put all their eggs in one basket and create this new area. But at the time, it was a much, much larger area. So what they did is they approached the local landowners, and at the time, Southwark Estate were one of the major landowners. And so we started to, at the time, we weren't really too keen about the idea of something so huge. And so we started to get involved and follow the council's progress in the developing of this plan. So we were sitting alongside a lot of the local residents, a lot of the other stakeholders, starting to sort of influence and try and shape what the council wanted to do. So on the concerned side, rather than, we want to be investing in this to I don't know, either make money or to flourish as an organisation ourselves. Exactly. I think the key thing is that at the time, obviously the plans and the local authority plans were gathering pace, and the thought was that they could whinge from the outside and just sort of, or they could have a seat at the table. And in order to do that, you'd have to have a proper entity and a team of people. So hence Buckland Development was created, and specialists from across the industry were recruited to join the team. And we started to actually then sit around the table and have more of a voice and an influence over what was actually being produced or be created in the council's plan.
So Fiona, as one of the experts that now has a seat at the table to discuss this new project that's going to happen here in Hampshire, this is way back when, 20 years ago. What were some of the key concerns in the conversations that were happening?
I think the scale, certainly the scale of what was being proposed at the time, whether it was suitable for the area and suitable for the infrastructure and the impact it was going to have on the area, both in terms environmentally but also other communities. The content, what was actually going to go into this new place. Giving it a name was another thing as well, because originally it was called the New Community North of Fareham.
Oh, wow. That's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah. And then for a while it was also called the North Fareham Strategic Development Area. So very functional, very,
It almost
hard.
goes into some of the other guests that I spoke with, and we talk about this idea of a new property development and it being a bit soulless. That really feels soulless, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think because... And this is no criticism at all of the council, but they had this housing requirement and this housing need. So for them, it was a very functional thing. And they were all about delivery of homes and trying to get as many in as they could. And I think that has changed over time as well. And it's a very good position that we're in now with the council. But the naming thing is quite an interesting one. So I don't know, shall I touch on that now?
Go for it.
So,
I mean, it'd be interesting to get some feedback and understand where the name Welborne comes from, possibly.
Yeah. So after having been called these very functional names, it was decided that actually we need to give it a soul, give it a name that people can start to recognise. Very much so, exactly. So the council did a piece of work where they looked at a lot of historic field names, a lot of historic references, historic people, and they sifted through all of those and came down to a vote of 3 names. Welborne was one of them, and it had some archaeological references to the area. Then Spurlings was another one, which is an old farm name, and Swansdale was another, again, from historic...
Do you know any reason why Welborne was chosen?
It went out to public vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, the engagement of the wider community.
Yeah, and that was something that was instigated by the council, and that's hence Welborne was adopted as a name. So it started to get some heart to it, I suppose, with having that identity. But to go back to your question about the concerns, I think it was when I talked about the content, it was making sure it had the right infrastructure, including social infrastructure. Enough community spaces, healthcare,
because that is the
green
soul
space.
Again, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the people and the connection that exists there that give it the heart and the soul.
Yeah, and also to make sure that there was some sense in the way the area was actually master planned and laid out. So I think a lot of people perhaps don't appreciate that over the years there have been lots and lots of different layouts and iterations. So what people see now with the location of the village centre and the secondary school and the primary schools and all the green space, that's a kind of a final version, but there have been multiple ones along the way where we've certainly laid it out, tested it, seen if it works. The council have done the same in their formative years, gone out to consultation. So it's been a real iterative, long process to get this very considered layout that we've got now.
And I imagine that the community liaison group have been a part of that process. So tell us about the formulation of that group as Welborne became to grow as a project and Buckland Development were kind of spearheading it.
Yeah. So our community liaison group started in 2017, and it came out of a long, obviously, period of involvement by ourselves. And as I said earlier, in the very early stages when the land was allocated and the council were developing their original idea, we were very much sitting on the same side of the table as a lot of the stakeholders and members of the public and representatives from the local communities. So we were a known entity, as it were, all the way along that process. So when it culminated with us putting in our planning application and then
owning and controlling all the land, and we were clearly the people that were going to be delivering Welborne, there was an element of us very much already knowing what the concerns were of the locals, because we've had that long-term relationship. It was the community liaison group was really just a means of formalising that and bringing people together in our premises, as it were.
Do you feel it made it more of an open door, perhaps, and maybe people that did have concerns, they felt more comfortable because it was Buckland Development leading the way now?
Yeah, I think we were a known entity. We've had that vested interest in the area. We've obviously got the very long links to the area, and there was definitely an element of those that might not like the idea of Welborne, but they were really pleased it was Buckland that are actually going to be delivering it, because I think there was an element of trust that had built up over the years, and us basically delivering on our promises, which I think is that trust element is a key thing.
And as the individual who heads up the community liaison group, I know you're keen to emphasise that the door is always open to listen to concerns that people have. Just explain to us the process that you have and the feedback and how you collate that and take it, and the meetings that you have with people in the wider community.
Sure, yeah. So the community liaison group meets once a quarter, and we have a total of 5 local communities represented. So we're surrounded by villages, and we've got North Fareham, and then we've got a number of villages that are sort of in the hinterland of Welborne, and some of them are very nearest neighbours. So we meet once a quarter. There's representatives from each of those parties, and it's really a very, very open format. I usually give them an update on what's happening and what's happened on site in the last quarter, what to expect coming forward. Always visuals, yeah. Well, I think that's the key thing. That is the thing is, for our team and all the engineers, we're very used to looking at engineering drawings. We know which way to hold up a map usually. We can identify, because we're just living and breathing Welborne all the time. But it's really important when we're talking to the public, then they don't have that intimate knowledge to be able to just pick up a plan. So it's really important those visuals and those graphics are presented in such a way that it's digestible.
Yeah,
and they can easily...
For yourself, what kind of nourishment do you get out of that? Because you do have your expertise, but I can feel here the warmth in your character, that you do come alive, I'm sure, when you also talk and interact with individuals. And how do you do that? How do you make it digestible for people that maybe don't have that knowledge?
I put myself in their feet. No, their shoes.
Shoes and feet.
All feet, yeah. So I tend to look at it from their perspective. So if I was them and I was living in that road, or I was living in that village, what would they be seeing? And obviously we have all the background knowledge, but I very look at it from their perspective, and then the likely questions that they were going to have as a result of that.
So the practicality, how it's going to impact their day-to-day lives, etc.
Yeah, so it's how their travel to work might be, dropping the kids off at school, using the public footpaths, things where they can get sources of information, how they can sign up to things, So it's really just putting yourself in their position. And also, a bit geeky, but I just find it really interesting. And there's so many different moving parts to a project that most people don't realise, because why would they? And I think it's sharing that knowledge. And I think if you can explain some of the challenges and the difficulties, mostly people will listen and say, "Oh, right, I see why that's not happened yet," or "Oh, okay, I get what's happening." So there are those that will never listen, and I'm afraid that you can't always
change that. You're never going to please everyone,
But I think that dialogue, and most important, the listening, for both parties, is really important.
And of course, one of the key parts of Welborne's identity is the attention to detail, not only in what we're creating within the project, but it's the considerations. So I've sat opposite here some of the powers that be amongst the project, and talking to the landscape architect, and then I know we're going to be speaking with the town architect, and then the ecology of the site. There's been so much consideration that must put opposition at ease to a certain extent as well. This isn't a quick fix, we're done, see you later.
No.
We want to be a part of this community, and we want to thrive together.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing at the moment is very visual. What's happening is we've started on site, there's a lot of digging and things going on. So that beauty hasn't been seen yet. Yeah. That design.
The works for the works, I've been calling it.
Yes, exactly. So that is challenging. I think people that's a bit of a big scary thing going on. So it's just bringing them on that journey and sort of showing them visuals, showing the CGIs. I had our last meeting, I showed a picture of what was basically a hole in the ground, which would be a lovely pond in the middle of a park. So I showed them as it was now. I showed them the plan that was part of the planning application and then our CGI. So they could sort of hopefully visualise that hole will then actually become this beautiful park. And it's making that connection in people's minds that I think is the important thing.
I think that also with the saying that the proof is in the pudding, that the Welborne project is not just about investing in Welborne, also to show our investment in the wider community. There's supporting local clubs, there's sponsorship opportunities. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's quite exciting. We've those have been local groups that have come to us to propose their club for sponsorship. So I think we've sponsored 2 local rugby clubs. We sponsored which was very, very sweet, a little chick hatching unit for the local primary school.
Oh, wow.
Which was a fabulous little incubation unit. And that had really good teaching consequences out of that for the kids. So I went along to the primary school and sat and held a little chick with the little kids.
Do you get to name like the mother hen? The mother hen should be called Welborne.
No. No, but it was lovely to see that. And yeah, so it's a community thing, isn't it?
That presence just aids the transition and the buy-in for those that I don't want to use the word outsiders, but because really this isn't, sometimes a project comes and it might be a gated community or it might be you just see the residents in and out. We want to invite people to be a part of the Welborne community as well from day one. That's why we're doing these things actually.
Yeah, hugely. And I think, we are going to have nearest neighbours. We do have nearest neighbours. And there'll be a lot of aspects of Welborne that will be beneficial for those areas. Some people can't quite see that yet because all they see is disruption or digging holes. Yeah. But I think the time will come where they'll see the benefits of Welborne. But it's a big, scary thing on their doorstep, and that's totally understandable. But I think it's just giving it time to progress. Yeah.
Even if we think about the opportunities, though, I know, speaking with Mark Wells, that many of his team are local residents, and even the guys that are working on the ground at the moment for the infrastructure type of things, most of them live within 10 miles of the site. It's probably worth acknowledging some of those opportunities that are going to come here into the region as well.
Massively, yeah. I mean, we talk about the housing and the green space a lot because that's a large feature of it, but I think we shouldn't underestimate that whole local economy element, let alone the employment and training. So we've got a policy where in all our contractors and consultants and anybody working on the project, we have a local first policy where we try and choose from Hampshire. So we're sort of boosting that local economy. And I did a calculation the other day. I think we've got about 90 different companies, from fencing companies through to engineering consultants, and about 50% of those were from Hampshire. They were local. So if you can imagine that as Welborne grows and goes forward, it'll be a massive boost for local economy. Yeah, and we want to encourage that as well.
Yeah, topping that up with the science and technology part, the opportunities there. There's going to be cafes, there's a pub, the town hall that's going to exist, the retail outlets. It really is investing.
Yeah, secondary school, 3 primary schools, so there's a whole education piece there as well. And I think the other thing as well is the potential for training and apprenticeships there. I mean, a 25-year project as a construction apprenticeship, you could practically start and finish your career on the one project,
I know we've got a presence, haven't we, here locally at Fareham College, I believe. Through
Blanchard Wells, yes. So you'll hear more from Mark when you have that interview with him. But yeah, there's those connections all the time. And that word community, I think, has to extend beyond not only the new residents, local residents, but it is also the local colleges, local companies, and Ramblers, all of those groups. We want them all to be part of Welborne going forward.
I want to almost build upon that word community as well and talk about, particularly if you think about the training of apprentices, etc., and how they will then put down their roots and thrive in this region. Yeah. There's a legacy, isn't there? Probably a bigger word.
Yeah, and it's multi-generational. I think that's the other thing, and a lot of that I think stems back to that heritage element and that connection that we've got with the area already. And we are planning a place here for many generations. You know, it's from the first-time buyers through to the retirement home, and everything in between. So we want people to set down roots and just really, build it with us.
I can feel your passion coming out as well. A local resident yourself for the last 22 years. I imagine there's a real sense of pride as you're going to watch it grow, and perhaps as you have already.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, for seeing it for so many years, kind of in theory, as it were, and just being on plan, to now coming out of the ground in the next year or so is going to be fantastic. Yeah.
And I know you've already got existing tenants here at Dean Farm and then also the local primary school, Boundary Oak. Tell me a little bit about how they've been incorporated into the design without significant upheaval, because that's probably also something that people want to understand.
I think, that's an important point, because whilst we have started on phase one, we've still got hundreds and hundreds of acres that is being actively farmed, being managed, or woodland, etc., all being managed as it has been in conjunction with the Southwark team. But we also have our existing tenants. So you're right, there's Boundary Oak School, which goes all the way through up to secondary school as well. And we have our tenants on Dean Farm as well as elsewhere on Welborne. And I think the key piece is to keep people informed, and to bring them on that journey, like we're doing with everybody else, and trying to communicate as regularly as possible. And again, seeing it from their point of view in their daily operations. What is it that they'd be concerned about? You know, what can we be telling them in advance? And just keep that dialogue going. Yeah.
As you say, open dialogue is so important. Sure. And I want to just get an insight into some of the examples of maybe specific opposition that you faced as part of the community liaison group. And I understand that we've managed to turn some of it around as a part of the group, some of the opposition. And we were talking off camera earlier, weren't we, saying that humans, we don't like change. And sometimes you need to be coaxed towards innovation and the new. How have you gone about that specifically, maybe with some people that immediately were rebuffing the idea of this new project?
I think consistency. I think having that consistent vision, telling the same story, sticking to that vision, doing what we say we're going to do, I think, again, builds up an element of confidence with people that we're going to do this well, and we're going to do the best job we can, and the place will be the best it can be. If you don't have that, I think there's this inherent mistrust in people, or they just don't believe, you know, the visuals that we've put out, for example, the CGIs. I get a lot of things, but, well, it's not going to look like that, though, is it? That's just a marketing thing. And then when you say to them, well, actually, no, if you look back at the planning applications and this, you know, and you take them through a little bit of the backstory, they're like, oh, you are actually building that. And there's a lot of elements of that goes on. But I think having the consistent team as well. I think having sort of familiar faces, not just mine, but other people as well.
And does it come into access to the experts? Of course, I'm a VIP. I've had access to a lot of the experts behind the Welborne project. But do the community also get moments with them? And it may be more informal things where they come to one of the quarterly meetings? Yeah,
well, certainly. Well, everyone's got my number and email. So I regularly, it's really great, actually. So if any of our community liaison group members have concerns, or they see something and they just call me, drop me an email, and I can get them a response very quickly. We have had people come in and have extra meetings or join the group. We've had a lot of public information events as well, where we've had the much wider team. In fact, recently I got contacted by a local hotel who could see the potential for Welborne to benefit their business. And one thing that was interesting, when I met her, she said, I was really amazed. I made one phone call and then I was put through straight away to the right person. And she said, normally when I ring companies, I'm like put on hold, or a message is passed on and I never hear.
You have to chase it up.
That's it. Yeah. So people are quite often surprised that they get through straight away to a sort of real person. So I think that's another important thing, to be responsive and to listen.
Yeah, I think as part of even this conversation, there's a real warmth about you, and people are going to watch this and think, okay, there's authenticity there. I genuinely believe that not only does this individual care, but also I'm going to be able to speak to her about the concerns that I have. And is that something that you pride yourself on as well?
I try. I certainly try. You don't, you can't always answer everyone's question, and you can't please everyone. We do have adamant opposers out there, but yeah.
But you're willing to give your time,
absolutely.
I guess, and listen. That's what people want to be heard, don't they, more than anything?
Completely. I think that is the real key thing. And what I particularly enjoy is if I have a challenging conversation with someone and you explain the bigger picture or the whys and wherefores, and then you can sometimes see a little penny drop where they sort of realise, oh, actually, this is a bit more complicated than I'd thought.
Yeah.
Or, oh, you're not the developers that are just, trashing everywhere. You do have to follow certain protocols and you have to get permissions to do X, Y, and Z. You know, it's that sort of education piece as well. I think that's the bit, yeah.
And also for a lot of individuals, when you're thinking about making a decision and you do the positives and negatives, and I guess for many people, they might lean towards it's what they know as perhaps the negative and just staying safe. But when you list in front of them, but it's also going to enhance the region in all these different ways. Although they're focused on their one issue, they then go, I never thought of this. I never thought of that. Oh, okay, the investment and the research that's been done, I don't know, for example, in Dashwood, and it's going to be maintained there, and we are still going to be able to enjoy it if we do already. That it's that attention to detail that, again, sets Welborne aside.
Yeah, but people are creatures of routine, and they don't like a break in that routine or significant change, and that's a very, very human characteristic. So for some, even though the benefits in the long term may outweigh this short term inconvenience, it's still an inconvenience, and that's the bit you've got to really listen to. You've got to keep reminding people gently. By the way, it's going to be a amazing place in the future. But for them, that's a really important thing at the time. So that's why that listening and dialogue is really important.
Yes, but we try and emphasise the short-term bit of pain for the long-term gain. Yeah. And of course, the project has been green-lit. There's workers on the ground.
For sure.
It is a 20 to 30-year process that's going to be happening. How are we going to continue to ensure that across all of that time, the people around of it feel a part of the project?
Yeah. I mean, we've set up a Garden Village Trust. So we've got the Welborne Garden Village Trust, which is going to be the sort of, it's a not-for-profit management body that will ensure the place keeping. We talk a lot about place making, but it's also really important about keeping the place. So we've designed, for years, we've designed this beautiful place. We've got to make sure it stays like that. So that will be, we'll have a proper estate office on site. There will be a community worker there from day one. Except from our first residents, we'll have a community worker. We'll have our own green maintenance team, rangers, all the rest of it. So there'll be an ongoing presence that will keep that vision and that dialogue going. Yeah.
So I guess from that then, I know we have stewardship and the idea of stewardship and ownership and pride all the way through the hierarchy, from the visionary Mark Thistleway through to Buckland Development and all the way down. Not only is it being handed over to the residents, but you also want to hand over that stewardship to the wider community, the villages around, to be a part of it.
Well, they'll certainly be able to they'll be invited in. It's, as you said earlier at the beginning, it's not a gated community, and they are our nearest neighbours. So they'll have the village centre, they'll have all the Dashwood, or as you say, the woodland, parks, the community halls will be available for hire. So, yeah, it's hopefully the influence will spread, and they'll be able to maintain their identity, because it's very important those local places keep that. But hopefully they'll get all the benefits as well.
Well, Fiona, listen, it has been a wonderfully warm conversation. And just to end, I just want to discuss, and for you, how you feel that this positive relationship and process here with the region, what's it going to mean for all areas?
Something new. I think that's the big thing, and it is breaking the mould. It is not your typical housing development, and I think it's a multi-tiered thing. It's the residents, it's the commercial companies, it's the education piece, it's the community in its widest sense. I think will be, it's a legacy. It's a positive, beneficial legacy for the area.
Well, Fiona, it's been fantastic to catch up with you.
Thank you
so much for your time here as part of the Welborne podcast. And all that's left for me to do is to invite you to continue to join us on the journey as part of the Welborne project by heading over to the website at www.welborne.co.uk. And we'll also be posting regular updates across the socials on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. So give us a follow at Welborne UK.